Hi, everyone. A couple of nights ago, some of us watched in real time as the Son of Man, an online, I don't know what you call him, a preacher, abused his child on a live broadcast. He was off camera, but it was pretty obvious what was happening. You could hear the impacts. You could hear him yelling at the child to shut up. You could hear the child's cries and screams. I didn't watch it real time. I was sort of surfing a couple of different hangouts and things that were going on, and I was kind of interested because G-Man was trying to get into a conversation with this guy because, of course, he has objections to some of the things that he's preaching. This guy seems to meld Islam and Christianity a little bit. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not that well versed in what he does. I was 5 or so minutes late to the party of watching this live. This guy going off camera to abuse his child. And I subsequently, somebody gave me the timestamp and I went and looked at it and I was immediately horrified. And this is something I've been wanting to talk about on my channel for quite some time. Looks like the time is now. Child abuse and spanking and peaceful parenting, philosophical parenting, nurturing, negotiation, the whole 9 yards. Something that was bothering a few people, including myself, however, was G-Man was in a constant communication with this guy. He kept typing comments into the text or the chat, challenging the guy on different things he was saying. And even I had tried a couple of times. I responded to a couple of G-Man's posts and I said, but what's worse is he's a child abuser, don't you think? I mean, I was trying to get through to him that stop the presses. There's something going on right now. There's an immediate thing going on. And of course, everyone was mobilizing, trying to figure out how to get information on this guy. I'm in Canada, so it's a little bit more difficult for me to act on something like that. But I was certainly willing to on this child's behalf. I said to my wife recently, on one level, I'm really glad that I don't personally know of any children that are being abused because I would be forced to act. And that would be very uncomfortable. But I would have no choice. And that's the way I feel. On another level, I do wish that there were some children around me that I knew of that were being abused because I am someone I know that would act. And a lot of people don't. And that was what was concerning me about G-Man that night. He seemed to turn a deaf ear to everybody's discussion of this act of abuse that was taking place right then and there. And the timestamps were being thrown around. If he was curious, like I was, all he would have had to do was say to someone, there's a child being abused? Give me a timestamp. That's what I did. I asked for a timestamp. I got the timestamp. I went and watched it. I was immediately horrified. And I was right there trying to organize with everybody to get something done. Now, again, I want to have a discussion about child abuse, adverse childhood experience, neglect, all of that stuff on my channel. So I think this is a good time to over the next little while, launch into that. But what I want to address is G-Man's video that I saw today where he says, atheists owned, what's worse, abortion or child abuse? So obviously, I saw a Galaxy Dreams video where she was disappointed in G-Man and said she can't be friends anymore with someone who's going to turn a blind eye to child abuse like that in the moment. And he's obviously taking some heat from people over this, that he virtually left it untouched until later on he did say finally that he thinks that the guy should be in jail. Now, I'm not going to say that I doubt G-Man that you that you somehow condone what the guy did or something like that. I don't doubt that for a moment that you disagree with what the guy did. I watched your video, and what's interesting to me is, of course, first of all, the deflection. Why not defend your position on that issue? Why the immediate deflection to, well, abortion, there's something you do worse than me. This is a complete deflection from the issue at hand, and I think it's an insult to that little girl. Right? To deflect from that. No. This is what we're talking about right now. You want to get into the abortion issue, then that's a separate issue. Right? There's rationale why people believe certain things. Now, there may be lines drawn here, even for me right now, because I feel uniquely qualified, at least amongst a lot of my peers, to comment on this issue because I agree with you when it comes to abortion. I do not agree with abortion. Extreme situations are their own issue, and I would deal with those individually. But for the vast majority of abortions, I think it's a procedure of convenience for most people. And I agree, even with the video clip that G-Man played on his video. It's from some obviously Christian website or something, but where they talk about the dehumanizing language that's used. We use a fetus, et cetera, right? This is done necessarily because people can't bring themselves to. And I think that's why people would object to pictures of aborted fetuses, right? Aborted preborn children. Because it's just a little too close to home. The beginning of knowledge is to call things by their proper name. And that's still a human being. But I don't want to dive too much into the abortion issue now. We can argue amongst our secular selves about that at another time. But I agree with G-Man. So you can't hang that on me, right? You can't say, well, you do this, that's worse. I still reject that anyway as a deflection, but even if you were going to use it, you don't get to use it with me. Now, G-Man used the excuse in his video that he didn't have his laptop in front of him, so he didn't know exactly what was going on. Well, that's fine, except you didn't ask any questions either. And you were typing text comments, so I'm not sure what you had in front of you. An abacus? I don't know. But when, there are times when something very immediate takes precedence over what you were doing. If you're driving to Disneyland, right, and you see a 40-car massive pile up with flames and people running out of their cars screaming on fire, bloodied, do you just continue on your way to Disneyland, or do you go 911 on the cell phone, drive over there, see if there's anything you can do to help save people's lives? I mean, you change course at that moment, right? And you didn't do any of that. You didn't take any of the cues that were being given. And I think that's what people object to. Nobody expected you to single-handedly go to the Son of Man's house and arrest, perform a citizen's arrest on him right then and there. But there was a child being abused right at that moment, and people were trying to get your attention. And to deflect on it now is just weak. G-Man, that's weak. Now, some of the people who may have been attacking you may be doing it from a faulty position, or they may be being unreasonable. But the thing to do is to just defend your position then. I fear that you're not doing that because your position is kind of indefensible, because I'm not sure how much you really are against child spanking. And I say that partially because, G-Man, when you were talking in your video, you kept saying spanking a child for crying. You kept qualifying it. You were choosing your words very carefully. And I happen to know that, the spanking statistics for different nationalities and races of people are a little bit different. And the African American community tends to be more spanking oriented, more sort of corporal punishment oriented. So I don't know if there's a part of you that sides with that, or if it's a spare the rod, spoil the child type of a scenario. You alluded to maybe having a hangout where you discuss spanking and discipline with children, and maybe you're going to get into that and talk about what you do deem as satisfactory when it comes to disciplining children, and maybe you're even going to say that you agree with spanking in certain situations. But it seems to me you were being very careful about your words there, qualifying spanking for crying. Now, I'll go on record now because, as I've said, this is something I want to go into on my channel. I don't agree with spanking for any reason. I think it's abusive. It's violence. It's violence. And you can't say to me, well, it's only a swat, et cetera, because if it's only a swat, then it's going to be ineffectual as any kind of a training tool, right? You're using that physicality to induce something in the child, a fear or something. So in order for it to be effective, it's got to be sufficient. And in order for it to be sufficient, it constitutes violence in my eyes. I have raised a child completely peacefully and philosophically, never ever once laid a hand on her in discipline or in anger, and raised her with negotiation, mostly just education, sitting down and explaining why something has to be the way it has to be, why I need her to not do a certain behavior, etc., negotiating with her. And she's a very productive, extremely generous and even-keeled, well-tempered, just a wonderful human being. So I have some experience in negotiation and peaceful parenting. It can be done. And I just wonder, G-Man, if you're not parsing your words here because you do agree with spanking to some degree. I have a big problem, G-Man, with you needing to go to, I'm going to pwn you atheists now. And it's just like with this ALS Ice Bucket Challenge and people talking about it being satanic or demonic and having all this kind of symbolism behind it. It takes the focus off the little girl. It takes the focus off the child abuse. Now, if you want to put a focus on abortion, and I think you probably have many times in the past, then do that. Do that of its own accord. But don't take the focus off of a little child and all the children who are being abused just to satisfy your own ego that you don't want to be criticized. If you're getting unreasonable criticism, then water off a duck's back. Disregard it. But if you're getting criticism from people who are reasonable and rational, don't deflect. Take that shit head on. Right? Take that head on. Because if you've got a defense for it, then what are you worried about? Why do you need to pwn somebody else? If you don't have a defense for it, what's wrong with being a little bit introspective? Being a little bit of what I keep hearing Christians talk about is being a good Christian. Being reflective. Recognizing your own flaws. You're created as a flawed human being. Why so much resistance to showing your flaws and admitting your flaws and saying, you know what? I made a mistake there. I'm going to do better. It's really funny to me that the very people quite often who claim that we are completely imperfect beings have such a resistance to appearing imperfect. Gotta always be right. Gotta always be on top of it. Gotta always pwn the other guy. This is not about abortion. You want to have a discussion about abortion? You have a discussion about abortion. This is about child abuse. So let's make it about child abuse. I would invite you, G-Man, to abandon this line of reasoning, this attack on abortion, and focus on child abuse. And if you want to challenge atheists when it comes to abortion, I might even be side by side with you doing that. Probably not, because our basis for it is different. But I agree with you in that instance. But I think it's an insult to that little girl to make this about defending your name and pwning other people and turning it into an abortion issue. So I hope you'll take that under advisement. I kind of doubt it, but for everyone else, thanks as always for watching. And I would be interested to know your thoughts, your feelings, your history when it comes to child abuse, when it comes to spanking, when it comes to neglect, when it comes to yelling, when it comes to hurtful language. And I would also just ask, before you come at me full steam, because I don't know if I made this video, if I uploaded it or not, I can't remember anymore, but I was thinking about what's my future here on YouTube, and I thought, I'm not going to be the guy making videos on how to change your alternator on your 2002 Ford Focus, right? I'm just not going to be that guy. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to talk about issues that are important to me, and it's going to get controversial sometimes because, of course, we don't all agree. But what I would ask you to do, before you come at me with both guns blazing, is you check yourself and just see if you're not having a knee-jerk reaction. If you're not just reacting emotionally and just coming at me with, I turned out okay, or my kids turned out okay, or whatever. and that you're not willing to actually be rational about it and be secular, be a humanist about it, be scientific about it, and engage with me in a discussion, because I have no interest in getting caught up in a bunch of flame wars and stuff like that over this. I want to have a discussion. I think it's extremely important. I believe personally that children are one of the last groups to get full rights. Because even though we would say, I believe the children are our future, it's all about the children, etc., they don't have full rights in terms of the ability to act upon them, right? They are mostly controlled by adults, and their rights can be sheltered from them, and they don't really have much say over that. They don't have much control over whether or not they can have their rights enforced, and what kind of avenues they have to recourse and that sort of thing. So I think it's a very important discussion, and I look forward to having it. G-Man, if you have any questions or you want to talk to me about this, I would be more than happy, time permitting. It's not always that easy for me, but I would be more than happy to engage with you. And I promise you, if we do engage, I will treat you with respect, and I'm not going to engage in any of this attempt to pwn you. My goal here is to illuminate an issue and help maybe other people reach an understanding that I feel is accurate. And I'm open to correction if there's correction to be made. It's just got to make logical and rational sense to me. So again, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Have a great day.